Trojans Talk Research is a monthly spotlight on the research interests of Troy's faculty, presented by Troy University's Office of Sponsored Programs. This month features Dr. Jeff Scott discussing the topic of forging civic strength through the lens of history.
So I'm Jeff Scott. I'm the Director of Civics Education at, here. And so I also lead the partnership we have with the American Village, which is in Montevallo. Anybody been to the American Village by chance? Okay, you have? Excellent, Dr. Napoli. Okay, you have, right? Okay, yeah. Did you go on a field trip or something?
It was on a field trip. It was a long time.
Oh, yeah. So it seems to be the main reason people go, right? And so today I had this, and I really appreciate being here today and having a chance to talk about civics and history and everything of that nature. And I want you to know, I want you to be thinking of questions, okay? Because I love questions. And hopefully I have some answers, or at least point you in the direction of answers, okay? And so I had it in my mind when this came about that there was going to be somebody right here asking questions, right? It was just in my mind. And so I thought, okay, that's great. We'll lead the discussion that way and so forth. And so I didn't create a presentation or anything of that nature, and so which is good sometimes because people get tired of seeing that. But so I had those questions in my head that I thought somebody would ask, okay? And so first of all, what I want to talk about is kind of this overview vision of how I look at forging civic strength through the lens of history, okay? You're a lot younger than I am, but over the last 40 years or so, one of the things, how many of you went to public school, by the way? Okay, most of you, right? Over the last 40 years, and maybe even a little bit before that, what happened in schooling is that we started dividing out history and civics education, okay? We got through World War II, we hit the Korean War, then we hit Vietnam. Then people started having a distrust of government, right? The things you're seeing on TV and everything of that nature. And so we start having a lot of changes in our society. And so we get into the late 60s, and do you know what's going on in the late 60s, by the way? Very connected to something going on right now. Anybody? Late 60s, having to do with the Cold War, space race maybe, anything?
Landed on the moon.
We landed on the moon, right? And again, some people don't believe that, but we landed on the moon, right? And so, and now we're up there again, going around the moon, getting some great visuals, by the way. And so what happened was that we had this space race with the Soviet Union, which is no longer around, and everything, and I'm going to get eventually to where we are right now. And lots of money goes into education for math and science. Very important stuff. Very important stuff. Nothing wrong with that. But what happens, we start saying, okay, we have to win in math and science. And so we also have Vietnam going on. And it's like, well, we don't want to talk too much about that. It's the first war, really, that people can see what's going on, right? And so people start getting delusion and thinking, okay, in schooling, it's a lot easier to talk about math and science than it is history sometimes, okay, and civics. There seems to be less emotion involved with it, right? It's more logic. For those of you that are Star Trek fans, Mr. Spock, right? Logic. Okay, there you go. Okay, there you go, right? And so that continued for a long time. And then we get into the 1980s. You guys still aren't around. Okay, you're still not around. We get into the 1980s, and there's a report coming out about how far behind we are in scores compared to other countries, right? And so we have to say, okay, we put all that money into math and science, but it's not working. So guess what? We're going to put more money into it and expect more teaching of math and science, right? And so that started happening in the 80s. And so we get into the 90s, it's still going. We still have history and civics, but it's going in down to the elementary level now, okay? So this is kind of what's happening, and we get into the 90s, you guys still aren't around, right? We have to get over 2,000 before some of you start appearing, right? And so what happens is that I start my teaching career in the late 90s. And so I see how it's starting to come in now that, okay, even in elementary school, because I started teaching elementary school, that's why I first started teaching, that there's this push, we have to strengthen math and science, right? We have to strengthen math especially. Then it turns into math and literacy. We forget science after a while, okay? But still math and literacy, because our scores are so bad, we have to do that. And so what happens, and this has been going on since the late 90s for sure, up to today it's even worse, is that, and you guys may experience this or you may not have, but what starts happening, all these testing is in schools. We do all this testing for elementary students, and then all this testing in middle school, all this testing in high school, right? There's a place for it. There's no doubt about that. There's a place for testing and to understand if you're understanding the concepts and all that. But what starts happening is that, especially in elementary school, we start seeing kids struggling in math. Okay? And it's like, oh, we have to get them better in math and up to where everybody else is before they get to middle school, and also in literacy, because, hey, if they don't, by middle school, they're going to really struggle, right? So we give kids more math. We start taking away some of the things they really enjoy. And in elementary school is the time for you to develop a love of learning. Okay? And so what do we take away? It says, what subjects aren't really tested that much at the state level? Let's take away social studies, right? Brilliant move, just brilliant. Because everybody knows our society right now is having more trouble with people understanding what 2 + 2 is than civics education. You know, everybody knows that's what's more trouble, right? So anyway, that's what happens. Those same kids then go to middle school, and they had testing in elementary school. The middle school teachers look at, oh, they struggled in math. So we better give them an extra math help or class. So we start saying, okay, we can take them out of PE to do this. We can take them out of this other class, you know, so forth. They're struggling in literacy, so we give them more help, but we put everybody back in the same social studies class, because everybody can understand reading social studies text if they can't understand anything else. So those same kids struggle in math. Now they really don't love learning. They don't even understand why we're connected as a country, because we didn't develop that at the elementary level. Okay? So what happens? You get to high school. They're looking at it, administrators are looking at it. Believe me, I was a school administrator, I was, superintendent's level, and you start looking at these things and it's like, oh, these kids struggle to math. Guess what? We're going to have to give them a remedial math class. So then, instead of developing skills by high school that they can put into practice and really love, right? We start putting a lot of people in math class, and the kids that can excel at math, we've got to slow down. So these other kids can start doing what they hate, math, right? And so by the end of high school, we've got kids that are struggling in math. They still don't have the math credits because many colleges require 4 years of math, okay? They still don't have it, so it's like, what do? We put everybody on a computer. Okay, we're gonna let you, we need you to pass this math class, right? Hey, I just failed this twice, look here, do it again. Right? And so then finally they pass it, whatever. Did they learn a lot of math? Probably not, right? Did they develop a love of our country? Probably not. Did they develop an understanding and develop any skills, right? Because back in the 80s too, we started taking vocational classes out of high schools, where kids love working with their hands, in which many of these jobs, even with AI coming in, they're the jobs that are going to be there today, right? But no, everybody's got to go through the same process, right? So then we get these kids, they want to go to college, and so it's like, hey, you struggled in math, you've got to take a remedial class now in college. And so it didn't work out. It still doesn't work out. because what happened is that we only taught social studies every once in a while. We didn't focus on what draws us together as a people, right? We started having history stuff kind of embedded with other things. Nobody understands what's going on with history. And then we had the civics class in high school. And I don't know about you, I remember when I was in high school, the head football coach taught our government class. It was like, well, I know we're not getting anything done on Monday, for sure, because that was the day we have to debrief about the game, right? We have to go over it, stuff of that nature, see what went wrong, then hear the coach get mad at us if we didn't go to the game on Friday, okay? By Thursday, we can't because he's got a meeting about the game, right? And then Friday comes, forget about it, okay? Now, not all coaches are like that. I coached, and it wasn't like that. But that was my experience with government. And so what happens, we look at government and civics as just stuff we have to get through, instead of being the most essential elements of public schooling, all right? And that's kind of where it developed my thought process over years. Seeing this as a teacher and then seeing it as somebody that led teachers and also would talk to the community members, it was like, hey, nobody understands why they're even an American anymore, right? And if you don't understand commonalities of what really brings us together, your culture can't last. And again, if we taught history the way we need to teach history, you would see that from every civilization that's fallen, okay? Is that if you lose a culture that's kind of connected, right? And culture changes, it adapts, but there has to be some foundational elements that cause us to stick together, okay? So that's where I am. And so I thought, you know what? We're never going to be able to change this from within inside school systems. So I started thinking bigger and working at a level that developed experiences for teachers, students, and community members. I was at Valley Forge in Pennsylvania, near Philadelphia, and then had the opportunity to come down here and hopefully develop the greatest civic experience through the lens of history in the nation, right? Because people are hungry for it. And so that brings me now to where we are today, right? If you look at what's going on in society, we've always had trouble. Don't ever let anybody tell you that, oh, this is the worst time in our history, right? We've always had trouble. But the one thing that helps us get through as Americans is that we find those commonalities that we can stand upon together, holding hands, and saying we're going to get through this. The minute we can't do that, the minute you're standing on your island, this person's standing on their island, this person's standing on their island, the minute we start doing that, and we've started doing that, we won't last. We won't last, okay? And so what becomes very important is that we strengthen civics, okay, our civic understanding as Americans and as citizens through understanding our history, right? Those two things have to be reconnected because you can't understand what it means to be a citizen unless you understand your history, good and bad. Okay? In the United States of America, we've had a very short history. Right? You know, you've studied China, they've had a long history. Japan, long history. Okay? United States, short history. Short history. Okay? The one thing that those countries had that we were never really able to do is that if you look at China and you look at Japan and places like that, they had long periods of just developing their culture. Right? Without all kinds of changes. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have phones all day, stuff of that nature. So they had that. Okay? We never did. Almost from the beginning, we had people moving in and out of the country, wanting to be a part of the country, which is great, right? Immigration is a part of who we are as Americans. But over time, we develop a structural understanding of who we are as Americans. And so then we had the late 1800s, we had people move here from Europe and so forth and says, hey, I want to be American. I want to be a part of that. It happened all the way. Then we had this problem in the 1920s. We didn't want immigrants anymore. Then after World War II, it's like, oh, we can't have immigrants again. And then the 50s happened. We started having more immigration, and it's great and stuff like that. But we always had this understanding, and people coming to this country always says, hey, look, I want to be a part of who America is, okay? Because there was this understanding of our foundation, okay? And again, good and bad. Because the one thing that we have in this country is we've been able to adapt and adjust and make changes over time. Did you know that we have the oldest constitution in the world, even though we're one of the youngest countries in the world? Did you know that? Yeah. Our constitution has never changed. Now, we've amended it. We've had some amendments, okay? But it's never changed, where other countries have changed. And that was the brilliance of our founders. They understood that as a country, if we put too many specifics in place, then what's going to happen is that people aren't going to like it. They've adjusted too much. It won't be flexible enough, okay? So that's what happened. We have a great constitution, but it takes us together to keep our country strong, okay? And there's four elements. There's four elements that really helps make our country strong, okay? And I think sometimes what happens, we have these phones in front of us all the time, right? All the time. I'm sure some of you have them down below right now thinking, I better not miss a message, or I'm thinking, oh my God. You know, I used to have this phobia if somebody didn't text me back within 10 seconds. It was like something's wrong, okay? We have these all the time. Do you believe everything you read on this? I hope not. Okay? Because whether you're a Democrat or Republican, the more things you look at, that algorithm starts sending you further and further in one direction. You're smart people. You have to recognize that. Okay? You ever heard the phrase, if you divide somebody, you can conquer them easily? Okay? United we stand, divided we fall. It's true. As Americans, we have much more in common with each other than we disagree on. We just don't realize it, right? Because these algorithms play us against each other. And who does it help? It helps people that are in power, right? You got one side, a lot of these people stay in power. You got the other side, these people stay in power all the time. Come election season, it's like, okay, you got to get in your corners. You got to get in your corners. But we can't do that as Americans anymore. We have to say, what are our commonalities? So there's four things that really strengthens us. And as individuals, I want you to think about individuals right now, okay? Four things. One, what drives you as a person, right? Whether it's spiritual belief, internal motivation, what drives you? Okay, you have to have that at your inner core. Okay? If you're just floating through life and you don't have any drive or anything right now, you're going to struggle. Okay? The other thing is your health. Did you know the medical industry in this country makes more off things that could have been prevented just by living a healthy lifestyle than anything else? Right? The better you take care of yourself, right, the more fulfilling your life's going to be, the less you're going to pay in medical costs, so forth. It's about moving, right, having pride in yourself, those kind of things, right? The other thing, besides, whether it's spiritual well-being or internal motivation, we have health, right? The other thing is learning. Your mind is very important. As a citizen, if you're not developing your mind, you're going to struggle in life. Okay? The minute you said, I've learned as much as I can, is the minute you start going backwards. Right? You have to keep learning all the time. I remember when I was in college, you leave high school and you go to college, and you're thinking, oh man, our generation, we have all the answers. Some of these older people are stupid. And some of them were. There's no doubt about that. But the mistake we made was thinking we had all the answers, right? I told somebody this one time, I was speaking to a high school group, and they said, well, just look at all the things, look, our generation's doing this, and, we've got this technology and stuff of that nature, we're probably more advanced. I said, okay, how old are you? And the person said, I'm 17. I said, great, you've been on this planet 17 years, right? 17, right? That's a long time. Probably 5 of those years you barely remember, right? So let's give you 12, okay? And I said, that phone that you're holding, that you've kept looking at, who developed that? Was it a 17-year-old or somebody much older than you? Well, they were older, right? I said, the clothes that you wear, I said, we have 12, 13-year-olds making all the clothes in this country, or do we have people making things that they want you to wear? So just remember that. A lot of the stuff that you like today are developed by older people because they know what to get you. Happened to us too, right? So you have to be aware of that. And the other 4th element is finances. You have to learn about money. You have to, okay? If I could change anything in civics education right now through the lens of history, is that when students go to high school, I certainly would change how many credits they need of certain subjects to go to college. But the other element that we'd have personal finance embedded all the time. So when you do get out of high school, you'd have skills and you understand money, right? Because what do we all deal with? Money, okay? And so we have to keep track of that. And so that's why I wrote this book right here. And I got the second one finished right now. It's just, just trying to tidy it up. But this is my elementary book, Oscar Visits Valley Forge. Okay, going back to that history element. And this is about perseverance. One of the biggest things you can do as a student right now, right, and I'm sure some of you work, okay, is persevere. Things are going to be tough. There's no doubt about it. You have to persevere in life. And so I love talking to elementary students and getting them to understand what perseverance is, and that saying, hey, it's not going to be easy all the time. And the more you can do that, the better life is going to be for you, okay? So always think in your mind. I always think, and I'm going to open up for questions in just a minute. I always think in your mind. When you see negative stuff on TV, you see it on the internet, you see it, on the phone, and it's, I can't believe that. I always think, who benefits from keeping people divided, okay? I always remember that. Look for ways to connect with people. Right? There's different races in here right now. I'm sure there's different beliefs in here right now. Even though we're at Troy, there's fans of different football teams in here right now. Okay? But we are more connected than what some people want us to believe. Okay? When we're fighting each other, we can't hold other people accountable. Okay? I always remember that. And if you can do those things, you're going to be a great leader. And how many of you probably have, all of you are taking, no, not all of you, but the leadership course. How many of you had a leadership course? Okay, a lot of you, right? Leadership is for everybody. It's at home, it's in your places of worship, it's in school, it's in your work. Leadership is everywhere. You may only lead one person, or you may end up leading 1,000 people. It doesn't matter. Okay? The first person you have to lead, though, is you. You have to lead yourself. Look inside, see what drives you, reach out to connect with people you think you can't connect with, but most likely you can. Okay? That's what's going to keep us strong. And that's what's going to keep the United States strong. Right? We have one country. We have one country, guys. One. It's called the United States of America. If we lose it, it will not come back. Okay? I always remember this too. It's easier to make something better when you love it. Do you have to like everything about something you love? No. Right? We all have family members we love. It's like, oh gosh, I hope they don't show up. Right? You love them, but do you like them all the time? No. But if you love them and they came to you and says, hey, I really need help with this, you'd probably say, okay, I really don't like you, but I love you. That's what we have to do with our country. Right? There's going to be things you don't like all the time. Okay, it's happened through every generation. But to make something better, you got to love it. Always look at ways you can love it, and that'll help you make things better. Okay? All right. Let's open up some questions about civics and history. And guys, I certainly hope you have some questions. Okay? I certainly hope you do. Because even adults in here, sometimes I plant questions, because it's like I know some people aren't going to have questions, but hopefully we do today. Does anybody have a question? Okay, yeah.
I guess it's not about the civic thing, but I guess if you were actually over the whole, I guess not U.S., but the whole state, what would be your the actual course requirements for the whole system, the school system?
Okay, first of all, this chair's starting to worry me because I've sat in it twice and it's dropped each time. Okay? And I even checked my weight this morning. I've lost a pound or two. So this is concerning. So if I go to the floor, I've already told you. Okay? So I think about that all the time. Right? The one element, in the state of Alabama, you've made a lot of progress with history or math and literacy. And literacy is very important. Let me tell you something. The two most functional skills you can have as a person, okay, is literacy and mathematical skills. The two most functional skills. The most important field or subject is the social studies, because those incorporate those two elements. When I say mathematics, it's about foundational mathematics, where everybody understands how to deal with money, the basic functions of math. You're going to be dealing with mortgages one day, you got interest rates, those kind of things. Those are functional skills, right? Literacy, same thing. Everything you should be given as a citizen to read, you should be able to understand what it means, right? Now again, we have some corporations or lawyers and stuff, sometimes they're very good at writing things that you think, what does this mean? Okay, but everything you should be able to read on your own. Because you're going to have to sign documents. Don't sign something you don't understand. Those are the most important things. So certainly I would focus on those two elements in elementary school. But the other element is that we have to get our kids to understand love of learning for our country. What connects us, right? Not that you're going to agree on everything, but what connects us. All right, look at traditions that have connected us. Look at those kind of things. You have to make social studies and civics a priority in the state. I would certainly put more money into civics and history, but the way you do that, and it's not just Alabama, it was also other states that did this, and it worked very well, right, for a number of years, especially going back into the late, probably 90s, early 2000s. We had a great movement in this country of STEM, right? STEM is wonderful. And it gave opportunity for kids to work with their hands and develop, make stuff, right? And it was very good for companies to say, oh, we can put money into that, right? And so forth. And the companies really liked it. It gave them a lot of good publicity and so forth. But what we need, companies now, though, are saying, hey, look, we really need workers that think, right? We need workers that want to be a part of something bigger. And so I would work very hard right now to develop the same kind of development in STEM for civics and history, where a company says, hey, come in and help us develop the greatest civic and history experience for our students in the nation. Put money into it, right? And companies are hungry for that. They want that. That would be my first step right now. Yeah. Who else has a question? Yeah.
Do you think it's essential that we go back to Pennsylvania private schools? Like, we can still use technology, but do you think we should put in school?
Okay. I was just reading some studies on that. And again, if you've done this kind of stuff, you see the problems early on when everybody says, okay, get on your Chromebook, okay, get on your iPad. You see the problems with that early on. I saw the problems with that, but most people that wanted to do a one-to-one school, it was not bad intentions, okay? Why? Because they felt like we weren't learning enough to begin with, okay? And then, so we developed, so okay, now if they had more access to online stuff, blah, blah, blah. But I was just reading a couple studies, and one study in particular about how they looked at cognitive development over the last 25 years, right? And how it started going down in terms of their brain being able to process information. It's in direct correlation with how much time now we've spent online and doing things on computer. We've always known, I remember this early on, you know, it was like, hey, the more you write stuff down, the more your brain internalizes it, okay? Do we need to totally get away from doing stuff online? No. But do we need to do more stuff where people are actually reading something and writing stuff out? Absolutely. And we made a great excuse by not teaching cursive writing, by the way. How many of you write in cursive are good at it? Okay. Not everybody. But somebody said, oh, it's not relevant anymore, right? I remember when it started going on, it's not relevant anymore. People can type stuff all the time. And look, if it wasn't for me doing stuff on the computer, I would not have made it through school. Right? My handwriting's atrocious. Okay? It saved me. But at the same time, I knew how to write cursive. You know why that's important, by the way? Do you know why it's important? Okay, sometimes I wonder if anybody can write their signature anymore. It's like scribble, right? And everybody go, oh, okay, thank you, right? Yeah.
Being able to read old documents.
That's it. When you can't read our founding documents, you lose a connection with who we are. I never realized that at the time. Most people were saying, hey, that's okay, I understand. Yeah, that's a good point about not teaching cursive writing right now, blah, blah, blah. But they were wrong. I was wrong. It's essential, not that you write in cursive all the time, but that you understand how to read it, because our founding documents are written like that. Okay, you have to be able to go back and read those. Otherwise, you're going to have somebody just tell you what to think all the time. Tell you what those documents meant, right? You have to be able to read them on your own and so forth. We never want to get to that point. And the other thing is that I just realized this a couple years ago. How many of you can read a regular clock? Okay, most people in here, right? I was in a class doing a talk and everything. I said, hey, how much time do I have left? What's up there? And almost anybody in there couldn't even tell what the time was, right? Because nobody's teaching how to read the regular clock now. We start missing essential skills that you don't realize they're essential unless you've lived through it, okay? So when adults talk to you about, hey, you know, some of these things we shouldn't be doing, ask why. And then go look at it and say, you know, maybe they're right on that, okay? I'm fortunate in that I've lived long enough, and that you guys did not, and some people in here have, obviously, that we saw the crossover between no internet and the internet. Drastically different in terms of thinking, how you find information, right? You never lived through that. You don't understand some of the issues that have come along with that, okay? And so we have to think through that sometimes. But do we need to get back to using pencil and paper? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to help our mental development, right? Because right now we don't even know if what we're seeing online is even true. Okay? Great question. Okay. How long do we have? Hold on a second. How long do we have? Okay.
For one, thank you so much for talking about civic strength through the lens of history. I have two questions for you. The first one is the Alabama Education Department recently shifted the 7th grade civics curriculum from just a 7th grade civics class in middle school to spanning over civic education in social studies classes in 6th grade, 10th, and 11th grade. Do you think this hurts or helps building that civic strength?
Well, I certainly see why they did it. It's because we need to make sure that we have civic understanding throughout. So I've gone through all the standards and everything like that. I'm not sure that you're going to really develop as a strong citizen throughout, because remember, since it's spread out like that, because remember, teachers only have so much time to teach everything. Okay, they only have so much time. Right? Some people say, oh, why aren't we spending all the time on World War II? You know, you get your military teacher in there and says, hey guys, we are going to talk about World War I, World War II, the whole semester. Right? Whether you like it or not. Okay? And then it's like some people want to talk about the Civil Rights Movement for 5 weeks and so forth. And some people want to talk about the space race for 5 weeks, right? Everybody doesn't have that time. So when you spread it out too much, and somebody doesn't really understand history and civics, it's hard for them to really tie it together. So I think they need some more resources for that, right? I think the biggest problem is that right now with 6th grade, 6th grade is one of the biggest changes. And so we have history and civics, and it's pretty good. It's kind of, especially it's basically history and civics from our development up to early 1800. Okay, history of that, kind of government at that time, right? But you don't get U.S. history again till 10th grade. Right? Are you going to remember everything from 6th grade up to 10th grade? Right? Did we develop a love of our country from 7th, 8th, 9th? Some of the most foundational years of saying who we are as a person? I think that's the biggest problem. And again, there's no easy answers all the time, but that one stands out. What's the other question?
My next question kind of speaks to when you spoke to some of the hard history we have in our country.
Uh-huh.
Can you give some tips on how we can come together to discuss, those hard pieces of our country, whether that be slavery, Jim Crow, things that we might not be comfortable to speak to anymore?
The easiest way to do it is you just do it. I've worked with teachers on this, and people are so scared to talk about anything, right? As a country, as the United States citizens, should we be scared about talking about anything? No, right? But that's what's happened because people get afraid of their jobs, and it's a fair point, right? But that sounds more communist to me, honestly, when we're afraid we can't talk about stuff. I taught elementary, middle, high school. I've taught college classes. Never once did I worry about not talking about a touchy point. The way you do that is that you have to build connection with people first. They have to know who you are, right? They have to know you care. They have to know you know what you're talking about, that you have their best interest, right? And so when you do talk about slavery, stuff like that, Reconstruction, the Civil Rights Movement, black codes, and not only that, but women issues as well. You're talking about, the right to vote, and you're talking about, the feminists of the 60s and on up. The only way you talk about those and have a civil conversation is that through the relationship building first, right? I taught in rural schools and I taught in urban schools. I taught in the most rural school that you could possibly find. I taught in the most urban school you could possibly find. Were they different? Absolutely, in many ways. But were they just kids when it came down to it? Absolutely. Right? My proudest moment, I was teaching at one of my proudest, not proudest moment, hopefully I have a few, but I was teaching at the urban school, and there was probably 3 white kids in the entire school, and there was probably maybe 3 or 4 white teachers, whatever. And I loved it. I loved it, man. We had a great time, and the energy, right? I remember this kid came up to me, it was history class, right? U.S. history, and we taught all of it, right? I told him from the beginning, I said, look, you're not going to like some of this. I said, but you're going to love some of it too. I said, we're going to be stronger at the end of the year than we are at the beginning of the year. Okay? And so a kid came up to me one time, probably about midway through the school year. And he says, hey, you know a lot about African American history for being a white man. I said, well, I appreciate that. I said, is that good? He said, oh yeah, man. He says, we need you to do something. I said, what is it? He said, we need you to coach the African American History Bowl. We don't have a coach. I said, are you kidding me? We're in, right? So I got all the materials and everything like that, and we spent every day, right, working our tail off. And we got to the tournament, and it's funny. I was the only white person in the entire building, right? And I thought, this is great. So we get up there, and I'm, and again, I coach them like I coach ball. They get something wrong, I just, call timeout. What was that? We were one question away from winning. And they got confused between W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. And we'd gone over it, right? It was the deciding question or something, and we finished second. But man, you know why that was special? Because we connected. And as human beings, it doesn't matter if you're black or white or whatever. It's about connecting, right? When you can do that, you can talk about anything. Those people that have trouble talking about anything, they probably haven't connected with people very well, okay? Any other questions? Any other questions or thoughts? Yeah.
You talked about how us as the United States, we didn't have much of a long history to be able to cultivate our own kind of strong culture.
Yeah.
Like you said, as Japan and China were able to do. Would you say that hurts or helps us?
And there's both.
Because we also have our immigration.
Yeah.
So we bring in other cultures.
Yeah, it's both. And so what happens when you don't have a long time for people just keep coming in, or countries attacking you? By the way, it wasn't just people coming in. It was countries attacking them, right? They went many years, and it was like, okay, nobody's attacking us, right? We're not even in a war with anybody. How long has the United States not been in a war with somebody? I'm serious. American Revolution, we were in a war, right? We have some peace. Everybody's thinking we have peace. Then we have the War of 1812, right? Our White House gets burned down. How many of you studied the War of 1812? Okay, that was bad. Okay, so we ignore it. It's best to just move on, right? Let's have some peace, okay? And so then Andrew Jackson comes along. He's at war with everybody, okay? We have all kinds of issues. We have the bank war, right? Not really a war, but kind of a war, a cultural war. But then we have the Mexican-American War in the 1840s, right? Where we get Texas and everything out west, right? Then we have this thing called the Civil War, okay? The Civil War. And so then it's like, oh, we get past that, and we have Reconstruction, which is kind of its own war in a way, and so forth. We get through Reconstruction, everybody's feeling good. And what do we have in the late 1890s? The Spanish-American War, right? Let's go to war again. Some of the same people that fought in the Civil War fought in the Spanish-American War. Then it's like, okay, good. We're done with war, man. End of the century, Teddy Roosevelt's coming to be president. We don't have to worry about war ever again. Well, then World War I happens. The Great War, the war to end all wars. It wasn't even called World War I because you know why? They didn't know we was going to have a second one. It was called the Great War. And so then we said, good, we're done. That was so bad, nobody would ever want to fight again. It was horrendous, right? But what happens? We have World War II, right? And then it's like, oh, that was so bad, nobody wants to fight again. Then we have the Korean War. That was so bad, we're just kind of ignore it and say, we're all happy in the 1950s? Everything's peaceful, blah, blah, blah. Just ignore the Korean War, okay? Then what happens? We have Vietnam. Then we can't deny it because now with technology, we have reporters embedded in Vietnam. And then we've never really recovered culturally from that. But when you have war after war, and you have young people that have seen some of the worst stuff ever, then they have to raise kids without having treatment for the things they've gone through. Does your culture struggle? Yeah, it's one of the things I'd love to see more research on. I think more, and when we talk about immigration, we're not talking about just immigration. It's about illegally coming in the country and legally coming into the country. We've always supported legal immigration in the United States. The bigger issue is, how did going from war to 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 war impact our cultural development? Think about it. I've seen people come back from Iraq and they struggle. And they have a lot of help now. World War II, they didn't. Our soldiers from Vietnam got booed and had things thrown at them when they came back. Most of them never wanted to talk about it, right? World War I was horrific. But for us in the United States, it wasn't as bad because we was only in World War I 1 year. So when you think about cultural issues, I would tell people, don't look at so much of the immigration thing, because when you look at immigrants over a number of years, it's like, hey, some of this Italian stuff we love, right? We have the Harlem Renaissance we love. We have all kinds of things that embedded into our culture. But the breakdown in people and the trust in government and the trust in people comes through what they went through in time of war. We've never had a long period. Think about that. What did you think about that? Was that pretty good? I thought that was a good one. Hopefully you'll think about that. But what I tell you all the time, what I tell people all the time, and I'll end with this, unless somebody has a question, that whenever we do experiences, and this thing, I'm kind of this initiative with Experiencing America, and we have the Trojan Patriot Academy, and we have Teacher Institute, we're going to do stuff for the community. It's not about putting on programs and stuff, it's about experiences. I'd love to do a college civic experience and everything like that. It's about experiences because those are deeper than programs, right? Those stay with you. Everything we do in here has to matter out there. Otherwise, there's no reason doing it. And let me give you an example. I went, and I won't tell you the city or the organization I went to. It's a very big city, right? Organization with a lot of money. And we were at the dinner that night, and we had all these fancy speakers that talked during the day, people that know civics and know how to improve our country, right? People from Harvard and Yale and stuff of that nature, talking about, oh, we need to do this to improve society, right? I'm sitting at this table for dinner, and we have another speaker. He's very famous. It's written some great history books and everything like that, talking about we got to reach out, we got to do this. People's got to understand, blah, blah, blah. I look out the window. I kid you not. These buildings are very close together, big city. There's a road, it's a small road, but it's very close. It almost looked like an alley. There was a homeless guy sleeping in the doorway. People came in and out of the door stepping over the entire time, going in and out of the door. I saw a drug deal go down. I saw one person completely drugged out. They had that thing doing like this. They were completely drugged out. I saw kids walking down the street, listening to music, playing on their phones, not even realizing if a person beside them disappeared, they would even notice. Okay? I'm thinking, okay, what we do in here has to matter out there. We can sit here all day and talk, but if you don't go and use something maybe you've heard today or something you're learning in your classes, and you don't actually go outside those doors and actually implement it, was it even relevant? Everything we do in here has to matter out there, okay? Always remember that, because if you don't, we shouldn't be doing it, okay? Any other questions? I'll tell you another proud moment, and again, you go through things. You get down sometimes, and you think, are you really making a difference? Just the other day, when I needed it the most, probably 2 weeks ago, just 2 weeks ago, I had an email from, she was my coordinator when I was in Valley Forge. And she says, hey, I'm reconnecting you with so-and-so. His name was Mitch, right? And she said, Jeff, I want you to know, and she says, Mitch wanted to reconnect with you when I saw him at this event because he heard you speak. 2 years ago, you're the keynote speaker at this place in Pennsylvania, right? And I thought, okay, I remember that. Before that day, he had his resignation letter in his hand. He was leaving teaching. That was the last thing he was going to do, was sit through that because he felt like he had to. He couldn't take it anymore, didn't think it was making a difference. After that day, he took his resignation letter and tore it up And he's gone on now to be a district leader. He's written 2 books in leading professional learning. And he says because he heard things, and he says, I can do that too. And so I emailed and I said, man, you don't know how much I appreciate hearing that, because sometimes you wonder if you make a difference. And he says, it hadn't been for that talk and talking about the things you talked about, I wouldn't be doing this now. He said, it completely changed things. So when you don't think you're making a difference, many times you are, okay? And so keep that in your mind. We live in the United States of America. Love it, right? Improve it. You are the future. We need you as leaders. Find ways to connect with each other, and we'll continue being the amazing country we are today. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you, and that's it.
Trojans Talk Research is a monthly spotlight on the research interests of choice faculty presented by Troy University's Office of Sponsored Programs.